There we go. All right. I think you guys can hear me now. Welcome to the stream. How you doing, guys? Glad to have you here. We are going to be working more on this character here, but not the face in particular. But I'll get to that in just a moment. This concept is created by Dino. There's a link down in the description to their ArtStation page. Go check them out. Go give them a follow over on ArtStation. Very cool artist. A lot of great artwork, stuff that's pushed really far. Just really good stuff. I'm a huge fan, which is why I'm making this. I'm working on this for a class, Dylan Ekren's class, actually, and I can talk more about that if you guys want. Also, really quick before I jump right in, go check out my Gumroad if you like some of the free stuff that I do here on stream or on my YouTube channel. I have some more high-quality paid content over there, brushes, materials, my newest course for sculpting toys and collectibles, yada, yada, yada. Go check it out if that interests you. I think there's a link down in the description for that as well. All right, guys, with all that out of the way, let's get into our character. As I said, got the face turned on right now, but we're not actually going to be sculpting on our head of our character, and that is an awful material for sculpting. We are actually going to be working on our body, and in particular, I think I'm going to be focusing on the hands. I want to quickly look over my body just a little bit here, though, first, and then get back in on my hands, or finally get in on my hands. Right now, they're just placeholders. If you guys were with us in the last stream, then you did see me do like some very slight stuff to this palm here. Really, that's about it. So while I'm doing a quick overview pass on the body, I'll give some time for people to pop in here, and then we can get started on our hands. I'm also going to turn off all this poly paint. Gets in the way, pretty annoying. Welcome. Hello, Folly. Ato. I have no idea how to say your name, and I apologize. That's pretty much how every single interaction on this stream will go. Someone will say something, I'll see their name and just panic and hope that it's a name that I can pronounce, and 90% of the time it is not. And that's just my fault, not yours. But welcome either way, no matter if I can pronounce your name or not. Welcome, everybody. Glad to have you all here. Alright, so quick pass on the body before we jump in on our hands. Oh, and feel free to shout out any questions or anything while I am working here, and I will do my best to answer a couple questions if I can. So we were doing some blending between some geometry. I recently merged all this junk together and quickly did some ZRemesher topology, which is why I'm doing kind of a quick overview pass kind of on this, just because there's some areas that I have kind of neglected, I guess I would say, and need some help. Specifically, a lot up in here, up in the shoulders. There's a lot of junk up in there that I'm trying to correct, but I'm not going to worry too much about that right now. Yeah, if you look at this stuff, we got some nice stretching going on back here. That is sarcasm, if you cannot tell. I need a lot of cleanup up through here. But we don't want to worry about that too much. I'm more of just looking for little areas where, like right here, we have a star. So I was trying to clean up that area just a tad there with my trim brush, Trim Dynamic. And it looks like we got most of it. I'll probably hit that again later for sure. But yeah, I think we're in a pretty good place to kind of move forward with our hands. So I say we can go ahead and do that. Brandon, what's going on, dude? I was just talking to you earlier. Welcome to the stream, my man. How are you doing? How you doing? The standard greeting of oi. That's how I greet everyone. Just a big old oi. All right. So I got my concept here. I'm using Spotlight for this. If you guys don't know how to work with Spotlight, it's up in your texture palette. You can even save your Spotlight images out. Normally it's not used as a reference tool. Normally it's for painting textures or occasionally modifying geometry. I don't know why you would do that. Maybe with like an alpha stamp or something. Rarely use it that way though. But you have to turn off Spotlight projection, which you can find in Brush, I believe in Samples at the bottom there, Spotlight projection. So if you turn that off, you can use Spotlight as a reference tool, and then you can kind of move your reference image all around wherever you want it. So looking at our hands, we got some crazy stuff going on in our hands. We got some crazy stuff going on in this character actually. Taking a look at the hands down here or the hand down here, I should say, versus the hand up in the top right corner there, her top right corner, her right hand. Oh, directions are hard. There's a lot of angular stuff kind of going on here in what I'm visually reading, and then comparatively, the fingers up here are kind of noodly. Some noodleness going on there. Let me see real quick. Find this image. Let's see. Let me find where I saved this real quick, and we can kind of zoom in more on these hands. Because I plan on not actually making this hand quite as noodly as this one. Or I'm sorry, I plan on making it not as noodly, more like this hand. Just because I think this is pushed a little bit too far, and I'm going to kind of make the executive decision to make that look a little bit better. So real quick here while I open up this image. There we go. Zoom in on this so we can see it a little bit better. So in terms of knuckles, there's like hardly anything here. There's maybe you could get like, depending on how you're reading this, there might be a knuckle here. It kind of looks like there's a singular knuckle, but these are pretty noodly. Comparatively down here, if you look at these, a lot of the forms down here are pushed pretty far, pretty crazy. But in the thumb, and I think in the fingers as well, you can kind of see at least a little bit better where these joints would take place. So very noodly up here, a little less so down below. We're gonna try to get these hands looking good. We'll figure it out. So let's go ahead and get started here on actually sculpting. I just wanted to take a look at those once more before I began. So if you guys were with me in the last stream, we started to blend our palm into our wrist here, as well as kind of just shape it a little bit in the palm region, flatten it out. It was a little bit thick, and now we can kind of start looking at these fingers a little bit more. Instead of working on all these fingers individually, pretty much what I'm going to do is work on one finger, and then once it's at a really good place, I'm going to duplicate it over and reuse it. And that's kind of what I've done for these placeholders. But let's go ahead and split off our index and our thumb here. And then these we'll probably end up throwing away. So working with our index finger first here, let's go ahead and just start. Whoops, totally lost it there. Come on, where you at? There we go. Let's go ahead and just start here by rotating into position. Make sure I have my transpose tool instead of that dumb 3D gizmo. We don't like that. So we're just gonna line this up a little bit and rotate. Right now all the fingers are kind of facing the exact same way, but in reality there's a little bit of some twist as the fingers kind of wrap around the hand. For the pose that we're going for, it's not going to be quite as obvious with the fingers kind of splayed out, the hand compressed against the ground, so we will not have that quite as much, but I want to get a little bit of that in there early on. I'm just going to hide these fingers. They're kind of in the way. And rotate our finger just to get it a little bit flatter. Line up into position. And we can go ahead and start sculpting on this finger. But before we sculpt on our finger, of course, we're going to have to Dynamesh this together. Looking at this in polyframe mode, if I turn on auto groups, You can see that each one of these is a separate piece of geometry. So we're gonna have to merge all this stuff together, and we're gonna use probably Dynamesh to do that. But looking at this finger here, so the way it's coming down, it's like a little bit towards the ground, and then that last joint has a little bit of a reverse bend in it, which is pretty interesting, and I think we can probably get that in here a little bit before we start merging everything together. So let's kind of look at that. Our fingers are also pretty fat compared to what's going on in our reference. These look a lot more thin. Up here, more noodly, so it's kind of hard to tell, but at least down here, stuff's looking pretty thin, so we can try to represent that a little bit too. But I think it's going to be easier to make that specific change after we Dynamesh things. So I'm just adding in a few subdivs here, and that's just going to help give us a little bit more form here before we Dynamesh. Pull out here, and I'm working asymmetrically on this finger, which is fine. It's not that big of a deal. It's a pretty simple shape. A finger is actually something that I recommend sculpting if it's your first time in ZBrush. Let's see here. Let's try to Dynamesh this. 400. That's not too bad. We could probably even go lower and still be perfectly fine. That looks better. Alright. So yeah, if it's your first time in ZBrush, gosh, everybody's like, oh, I want to make a character, right? Everybody wants to just like make a character immediately. But yeah, that's a terrible idea. You're gonna do such a bad job, and God forbid you post it online and say, can someone critique this? Because there's not going to be anything there for them to critique. It's too bad. The thing you made is garbage. And asking for critique is just going to have people kind of poop on your work, and then you get discouraged, and it's not a good situation. It's a kind of a little bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I recommend not trying to tackle a full character if it's your first time in ZBrush. I recommend trying to do something really simple, like a finger. Fingers are really easy to sculpt, and you have a reference handy. You should have a reference handy. You got like 1 in 10 chance of having a good reference close by. Hopefully you do. So easy reference, a pretty easy thing to sculpt, I think, if you're new to ZBrush, as well as what else? What else is great about sculpting a finger? Oh yes, it's also just like a really self-contained thing. So after you're done sculpting the finger, it's really easy for you to kind of critique it yourself. So you got your reference, you can look at your finger, look at the finger that you're sculpting, and say, did I do a good job? And hopefully you can look at that a little bit more objectively than you would maybe something else like a full character that you're trying to sculpt. So let's get in here with our transpose line, and this is where I was talking about adding in that squish, thinning out our finger. So I'm just kind of pulling up there a little bit, holding the shift key to make that stick to that transpose line. I'm going to move my light source to the front here, just to make sure that that's pretty uniform. And it actually looks fine. I think that's good. Unless you're sculpting Oscar from Sesame Street, and he is trash. Yeah, that's right. I don't think I ever watched Sesame Street growing up. It was just one that I missed out on. I don't know. But I do know who Oscar is. I often get Oscar and the Cookie Monster confused for some reason. I know that the Cookie Monster is blue, but for some reason I always think that he also lives in a trash can, which he does not. If anything, he'd live, I guess, in a cookie jar. So the knuckle piece that I had connected to this finger, I think it's kind of getting in the way here. A little bit too much going on with it. And what is happening with this song? Thank you. I think this back piece is kind of getting in the way a little bit. So I kind of want to destroy most of that form. I'm going to add some slices in here in the attempts to polygroup. So just 1, 2, and those are a little bit off alignment. So let's try that again from the side view. And they don't have to be perfect. They don't have to line up perfectly with those creases that I've made there. Let's see here. ZBrush, keep groups, really low poly count. See what this does. See, just because the crease was off a little bit, it was still able to kind of retain that form. Here we have a little bit of, like, if you look here, got this really nice kind of sweep going on. Up here though, it's like not as nice. So let's grab this poly loop, our transpose tool, just kind of move that down a little bit. Work with that poly loop there. And from here I can make some creases, I can bevel some edges if I want to retain that shape even more so. Looking at our finger, I think our finger needs to be, the read here that I'm getting is that the finger needs to be wider, but looking up here it kind of tapers. I'm just kind of throwing this in the trash and worrying more about this one for the time being. That is the hand that I am sculpting. But also, I like these hands are very, very different. Not just in pose, but in you know, basic form. So I like this one a lot more, and that's kind of the main hand that I'm going to create, and then, you know, duplicate it over for that one, and then repose it and resculpt some different things that will inevitably get screwed up along the way. Muzz, welcome to the stream. Glad to have you here, man. Let's see. So before we take this finger and duplicate it across the rest of our hand, we want to work on this a little bit more. Let's jump back to our reference image. Zoom in here really far. So if we look at the knuckles here, there is some there's some crazy stuff going on with the pinching up here. There's also like a very dark outline here. A lot of the form here is pretty crazy, and it's pushed pretty far, extremely far. So I don't think I'm going to do these kind of push up on the skin around the knuckles. I think it looks not super great. I'm not a huge fan, nor is it even present up here. So I guess we're kind of doing a little bit of a hybrid between these two hands. So we will figure this out as we go. It's a little bit of a process of kind of just back and forth with this reference. But let's look at our thumb real quick and get that to a similar place as our finger. Our thumb is coming down and also having a little bit of that bend up that we saw in our other finger. Much more so, actually. So let's start by rotating down here and rotating up along the thumb. So we do want to get that correct silhouette there. So from the front view, I want our thumb out more so. So we're kind of really stretching the palm. If you can imagine, a lot of the time when I'm sculpting a character, I actually get into the pose to see what's kind of physically possible. But sticking your hand down on the ground or just on a flat surface and flattening your hand out, you can kind of see the range of motion for your thumb and how far that can actually get pushed. It's not going to be 90 degrees, that's for certain, but it might be, you know, definitely closer to 45 if your index finger is facing perfectly forward. So we're gonna go with something around there. And then, of course, we will have to modify our palm to be able to fit with this shape and make sure everything else is kind of working together. Let's auto groups here. But as I rotated this piece around, obviously, I'm going to have to kind of stretch and fix some of this to make sure everything's working nice and neat together. And probably just a quick Dynamesh on this stuff as well. Subdivide a few times, just to get a little extra form in there, and clean some of this stuff up. This is a brush that I'm using. I can't remember who made this brush off the top of my head, but if someone is interested in it, I can look it up and let you know later. The brush is great, but there are a few things that aren't super useful in it. Like this additional knuckle piece tends to cause more problems than it does in being helpful. So I tend to destroy most of that form. It does help kind of connect it to the base of your hand though, a lot of the time if you are, you know, using it the way that I am right now. Let's kind of move that in. I'm gonna have to probably thicken that up or destroy most of that. Up here, I think we can add a slice to polygroup a lot of that. Get that from the side, come on through there, slice. Looks good. Let's ZRemesh it, keep groups on, and see what we get. All right. That actually worked really, really well. A lot better than our finger did. So let's kind of modify some of this stuff. Start moving it around, and you know, look at your own thumb if you need to. Even for working on stylized characters, anatomy can be super helpful for, you know, from a realistic character or a realistic person. So a lot of the time when you're trying to figure out this stuff, it is going to pertain to the rules of reality. And that's the kind of the same mindset when you're working on creatures or anything else. It has to follow the rules of reality. So if you're working on a creature or an alien, you know, you can't just do anything you want. It has to be believable. And how do you make something believable? Well, you steal from nature, or you steal from, you know, human anatomy, or you steal from, you know, an amphibian, whatever you're trying to accomplish. The same thing for a stylized character, you know. Let me know if that makes sense, or if I sound like a crazy person. Let's soften this even more so. Getting a little bit of a taper there, and I'm not digging that. I'm gonna have to blend this. And shorten our thumb as well, I think. Now that we've started blending there. Get a little bit of rotation here. Martin says, great look, like your take and the concept. Well, thank you, appreciate it, man. P.S. What display are you using? This is one of the big Cintiqs. I think it's the 27. It's the biggest one. And if the biggest one is 27, then that's the one. Let's see here. I'm kind of pulling up a little bit on that creased area around my joint. I want to this is so pushed in the concept. I was showing you guys that earlier. It's pretty stupid. I'm not a fan. We'll figure this out. I need to get a little bit more arc here. So let's maybe just try rotating. So a little effort after we merge that down, we can get that curve looking nice from our wrist up to our thumb. If you look at your hand, just the way that that works, the way that I have that aligned right now, it has this kind of V shape here. That's not really possible in a hand. So what we're gonna have to do is kind of push and pull some stuff around here to make that stretching of the thumb work a little bit better. What's going on under the skin is that the essentially the bone is going just like this, and that's like a really simplified version, but from essentially your wrist to the tip of your thumb. So you want that to be, you know, relatively a straight line there. And you can probably see some of your bones through your skin, depending on how much skin and other stuff you got going on there. But for the most part, I think everybody can see their knuckles and joints and everything else. But you know, other than kind of bending forward at your first joint there, it's going to be a relatively straight line. So we want to make sure that that all fits. And right now, it does not fit. So we'll probably line this up like so we get a little bit more of a straight there, blend that into the hand, and then kind of round that out, or kind of rotate it out all together at one point. So from here out to here, if we want to get more of that rotation, which I think we do. Pretty sure we do, because we want to get that hand outstretched really far. So back to our index finger, we'll definitely be doing some more stuff with our thumb, especially after we merge it into our palm. Let's see here, we got these junky fingers. We can use these to kind of help align with our other finger as we duplicate that, but I don't want them. I don't really think I need them. Plus, it allows me to kind of remeasure some stuff, and I'll talk more about that as we go. So looking at measuring here, let me get the length of my finger first, and the length of the palm. So the length of about your middle finger and your palm, depending on what side you're measuring from on your hand, they're roughly the same size. There's a lot of room for variation there. There's a lot of room for variation between distances and fingers. Like some people's ring finger will be longer than their index finger, and actually if you bend your hand in, your ring finger should become longer than your ring finger, or than your index finger. So there is a lot of room for variation in here with this stuff, but for the most part we'll kind of stick to the traditional rules for proportions. Do you smooth sculpt a lot? I don't know what smooth sculpting is, so maybe. Martin says you have a nice, you really have a nice way of working stylized. Thank you, I appreciate that, man. Did you get inspired from a specific artist or course or blank? No, not a specific artist. You can go to my ArtStation and look at all the people I follow. I think I follow like 600 people on ArtStation. Those are all the people that inspire me. Plus, you know, more on Instagram and everything else. Yeah, I don't really have like a specific artist or style that I'm, you know, trying to hit. Is dynamic on right now? What's going on? Yes, it is. Okay. So confused. If you're experiencing some lag, make sure you check to see if dynamic is on, because when you're working with subdivs and you're higher up, you can't tell if dynamic's on. But yeah, in terms of like specific artists, I don't really have one particular artist that I'm like, yeah, I want to sculpt like you. I like a lot of things, and a lot of things influence me. I like Nintendo a lot, which is probably apparent from a lot of the stuff that I make. But yeah, I don't know. Just kind of sculpt what I like if I'm working on my own stuff, which seems, you know, like the normal thing to do. Let's see here. Kind of want trying to get a read here real quick on just like not that. I want my selection. On the inside of my surface here at the top. So it's a little flat. I can kind of round that out a little bit here using my move brush, and actually an easier way might just be something like this, and get rid of a bunch of these. ZBrush sound effects are necessary for becoming a good sculptor. I think I said this in my last live stream. I can't help but make sound effects for all my sculpts, for every action I make. So I want to pull in more here. So very soft kind of selection here, and line up, pull up, and kind of round that out a little bit more. And now that that is rounded out a little bit more, add some additional squash overall, and then add some additional stretch to the sides. So there, at least the read that I'm getting, it also kind of tapers. It looks like it gets larger as it gets out to the finger, from knuckle to finger. And that might just be perspective warping with the camera, but at least that is the kind of read that I'm getting here. So I kind of want to try that a little bit. See what we can do. Daniel asks, for such work it's better to use a graphics tablet or PC. And what is the difference in work occur between these two? Station. I'm using a graphics tablet and a PC. This is a Windows machine that I built myself. So let's see here. Oop. Don't want to show that. Yeah, this is just a Windows computer, and I have my Cintiq hooked up to it. There are standalone graphics tablets like the Mobile Studio Pro, which is the new version of what Wacom calls their companion line, their companion hybrids, and companion pros. Now they're called Mobile Studio Pros. They're pretty cool. Those are still running Windows though, so either way it's still like a PC, I guess. Maybe more akin to a laptop, I don't know. But yeah, this is a Windows machine with a 27-inch Cintiq. Are you aware of the software Blender? I am. And have you tried sculpting using it? I have not. If yes, how is ZBrush better, or vice versa? How is ZBrush better? It's the industry standard. There are a lot of tools in here that Blender does not have, to my knowledge. There are a lot of workflows that my personal workflow wouldn't work in Blender. Blender does, to my knowledge, have something similar to Sculptress Pro with my workflow, my personal workflow. What I'm trying to figure out what's annoying me here with this. This first digit here. Pull that in. I think that's much better. A little bit too much. And I need to move part of this up as that starts to kind of subduct there, and I don't want that. But yeah, in terms of Blender, I mean, it's free, so go for it. But it's typically made for ZBrush, so if there's a particular brush that I'm looking for, it's going to be in ZBrush. There are a lot of reasons to use ZBrush over other tools, especially Mudbox, which is, in my opinion, a travesty. trying to fix this area of my hand. Pull up my kind of knuckle line that I've built up here. And if you're looking at a hand from the side view, you're going to have a little bit of an angle there to the palm, so we need to get that in as well. What is this a remix of? This is a remix of some Nintendo game soundtrack that I can't think of. Hello, copyright strike. So trying to get across, right? I want to angle that back a little bit as it kind of gets closer to the pinky. And kind of look at trying to do that with some masks and just rotating a little bit. Pretty simple move. This is a little bit more difficult of a transition to do here, especially if you're trying to focus on the side planes of your hand as well, which is what I'm trying to do right now. So kind of define that side a little bit better. It's okay if it's you know, messy here at first. Not gonna hurt anything. It's always easy to clean up later. And let's try to define this side a little bit better. Woo. Let's see. Martin says, I've used ZBrush for 3 years now and thinking of taking a course to move on and considering Shane Olson's course. Do you have a comment on taking a course and which one? I do have a comment on taking a course. Go to the link down in the description and go to my Gumroad and take my course, ZBrush Sculpting Stylized Characters for Toys and Collectibles. It's really cheap and there's a lot of content in there, a lot of good stuff. It's great for people that are looking to sculpt toys and collectibles, and it's great for people that are just kind of interested in improving their ZBrush skills. And if you like my free content and if you like my stream, it helps me out and it helps you out, so win-win. Other than that, you know, there are some really expensive courses that you can take. I can't really recommend many off the top of my head. I think the kind of price slash value relationship that you get out of those a lot of the time isn't worth it, which is why I kind of try to price my content a little bit cheaper, undercut the competition, pow pow. Not really, but I just kind of mark it up for, you know, what I think it's worth and what I think, you know, people would be willing to pay for it. And like I said, helps me out, so I would appreciate it. At least check it out. It's at the link down in the description. Basically sculpt daily anyway, but probably need more feedback, etc. Some feedback. It's definitely always hard to get some good feedback if you're looking for some mentorship. I've thought about offering some kind of mentorship in the past. I don't know. Maybe that's something I can look at more. There's definitely a need for it, I think. A lot of people are kind of looking for that personalized feedback. It's just kind of hard to find really good quality personalized feedback, especially since, you know, there's such a variation in everybody's abilities. So I don't know. It's kind of more of like a consulting thing where let's find out where you are, find out what your goals are, and kind of go from there. But I don't know if that's something that enough people would be interested in. I might consider doing something like that. Right now, I don't know. I don't think enough people are super interested in that. But maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I can ask on man, this is so dirty. I can ask around. Ask the peoples on the socials, you know. Let's see. Plus the thing with like personalized mentorship, it's like that's a big time investment for the person that's, you know, offering that kind of service as well. So it can be tough. Tough to find good mentors. Which is why I live stream. You guys can just come in, hang out, ask questions if you want, or just creep like the other 15 of you just sitting there listening. Yeah, I know you're there. But I don't mind. I appreciate you. I appreciate you. Still trying to define that plane a little bit better. So you can see that plane change kind of happening there. A lot more now than what we were looking at previously. So we're making progress. That's always good. Everything looks like an alien at first. It's just a matter of time. And kind of cleaning up that plane a little bit more. Right at the termination there. So I'm just using my trim dynamic brush pretty strongly there, and then kind of clean it up with either a crease with my pinch brush or trim dynamic, kind of whatever's working better there. For this area, I'm gonna kind of pull in a little bit and also kind of plane off this area, just so I can kind of change the plane of the hand a little bit better. Get that to transition, and then also once I rotate that out, that'll make a lot more sense. But all this, and we're just kind of looking at a hand. For those that are kind of popping in here that are new, haven't seen what I'm working on, here's the rest of the body. I also have the head. We can look at that real quick. But pretty crazy pose, very dynamic, pushed super far. We are working on the hand right now, so we've been zoomed in, focused on that for quite a while. Let's take a Ganda up here at the head. I'll turn on poly paint really quick. Zoom on in here. Here's our face. So I've spent some time sculpting on this for a little bit as well. So if you guys have any questions about that, feel free to throw them up in the chat, and we can go on back to our hand, wherever that is. Here we go. And back to our sculpting material. Let's see. Fingers, in terms of the index finger here, still not exactly where I want it. Perspective is messing with me as well. I kind of want to pull in a little bit more back here. I just feel like it's tapering pretty strongly there. Let's look here. Zoom on in. So I think it's a little bit of the perspective that we're dealing with, and it might be intentional. Kind of pushed it a little bit now. I don't want to push it and make it look super janky. So I think I'm just going to leave it where it is now, and after we blend that finger into the hand, we kind of want to push that a little bit further. I think we can do that. So next up, let's duplicate our finger and kind of cascade it down the rest of our hand, get the rest of these in there. So duplicate our index thingy, move our camera. Ugh. Come on, there we go. And we can start moving these into place. I would pay for that. I would pay for some mentorship, says Martin. Yusuf, welcome, says, is your room sunlit? Because it's pitch black night where I am. My room is sunlit. I have, let me see, OBS. Yeah, that's why there's such a strong light on my face. My blinds are actually closed, so really quick. Turn around. Ooh, three windows here, as well as I have these huge lights set up for when I do stream at night. So I got all these lights set up. I have no lights on in this room. All the light in here is from just this little like nook here, and closed blinds. So dang, that sun gets in the way. It's like really bright, really strong. But let's go on back here. Let's see, grab a finger back, and we can kind of start moving this into position. So our middle finger is going to be a little bit longer than our index finger. It's going to be roughly about the length of our palm. And you can kind of measure this out with your own fingers, but essentially what we're looking for is a little bit of an arc between the tips of our fingers, the your last digit there, your last knuckle, and that first knuckle. And this arc kind of follows this same pattern across all these knuckles as it goes down your fingers. So we're gonna kind of try to get that in there. You can kind of line that up if you want with your own fingers. You know, you can even, a lot of the times I'll kind of size up my mesh to my real hand and kind of put it on my screen. So if your monitor is big enough to do that, I think most monitors are bigger than people's hands, depending on how big your hand is and how small your monitor is. You could be Andre the Giant or something. Or maybe you just work on your cell phone. That wouldn't be possible, I don't think. Let's duplicate our other finger and get our ring finger in here. So I'm just duplicating these, rotating them into position, sliding them around a little bit. As you kind of go down the chain here, after you get to your ring finger and pinky finger, you might want to scale them down just to kind of thin them out a little bit. For your ring finger, I don't think it's necessary, but I like to add just a little bit of a scale difference in there. And then for the pinky, I'll do the exact same thing. So duplicate, move down, rotate, find our center point, scale in, and line that up. And now, of course, you know, as our hand is not perfectly flat, you look at your hand, but for this case, we're kind of having it stretch pretty hard, so it will be almost flat. You can kind of look at your hand dead on. If your hand is relaxed, it's going to have that kind of natural swoop or curve to it. But in this case, it will be, for the most part, pretty much flat, I think. So we can kind of look at doing that. I do not have a plane set up with this any longer, but I can kind of just visualize this without one. If we're having some trouble, we can get one in here, but for the most part, I think we're good. We just want to make a couple changes here to our palm or fingers, or you know, everything together to make sure that we're lining up nicely. It looks like the palm might even be up in the air a little bit, which is pretty unique. Kind of having this like the fingers are kind of like that on the surface there. So we'll play with that. We'll figure it out. Let's merge down. I'm just merging all these fingers into one group. Clicking on auto groups, so each one is its own unique polygroup. You can leave those individually. I like to I don't really need this level of polygrouping anymore. It's not really necessary. Not with what I have here. Let's turn on this. Give me just my wrist. And I kind of want to make some adjustments here to my palm. just to get some things lining up, I think, a little bit better with what will be our ground plane. So I'm just using a very large move brush right now. Nothing crazy. And moving my hand around, my palm around to kind of flatten it out. And again, let me show you guys. So if you're having some trouble kind of lining that up to be flat with your ground plane, whew, feel a sneeze coming. You can turn on your floor, but you know, maybe it's not the right size, maybe it's really far away like this. There are some options for like resizing that, but let's not worry about that. Instead, let's just kind of initialize here and make a cube. Move that down right here. And then you can just make yourself a ground plane rather quickly. And you can kind of make it for your whole character, or you can just make it for the area that you're working on, like the hand that I'm working on right now, if that helps. Whatever works for you. And again, these fingers tend to have like this little bit of a, kind of like a Spider-Man pose almost. I don't know what you would call it. With the palm not exactly touching the ground, more so the fingers kind of holding it up. I think I might try to replicate that look. So we'll look at that a little bit more here too. Let's see, Miriam says, I don't know how to polish my characters. Do you have any advice for that? I'm not sure I really understand what you're talking about. There is a polish brush. I don't know what you mean by polish. If you could elaborate on that a little bit more, I could maybe help you out. Just for kind of getting your characters to the next level. I don't think there's really general advice that you can give on that. There's some more kind of specific advice depending on what exactly you need. I think I want to flatten out this digit here, this turn, and if anything, get it to bend the opposite direction. So let's look at trying to do that with one finger. So with our rotate tool, a little bit flat up, might end up reduplicating these fingers after I make this change. A little bit more flat here. Let's see, will your stream be saved for a rewatch? Need to sleep, it's late in Sweden. No worries, everything that I stream gets uploaded to my YouTube channel, which is why I stream on YouTube. On Twitch it's not the same, not everything gets saved. But on YouTube you can have it all be uploaded after the fact. You can record while you stream, but it's pretty intensive on processing power, so I tend not to do that. Plus, just everything's here on YouTube. Keep it all in one place, you know. But yeah, it'll be uploaded on the channel within a few hours after the stream's over. So no worries. Go get some sleep, for sure, for sure. No reason to stay up and watch me. With this, so we have these other pieces in here. I could split those off and work on them individually. I'm just going to delete them, and I will reduplicate those. I got my subdivs back by just reconstructing subdivision levels, so we don't lose anything. This pose. I'm looking at it on my desk. I don't know if you guys can see my hand. I'm just like pretty much doing this and thinking about how much I want to do this. I at least want to get like a little bit of the hand off the ground here. It doesn't have to be crazy. I might have to take some pictures of my hand in this pose, which is something I actually do quite often for sculpting hands. It's very helpful. Let's see here. Just need to make a note real fast. Let's take our thumb and merge it into our hand. Start kind of forming up that area a little bit. So you guys, I'm sure, have seen this been done many times by me. If not by me, then somebody else. But we are gonna Dynamesh this in. There's always the new Boolean system, live Boolean, that you can use as well. For something like this, I would not use live Boolean. I would just Dynamesh, just because it's quicker. Live Boolean is for stuff that's like super accurate. Typically, I use it for hard surface stuff. That's pretty much all I use it for. It doesn't have much of a purpose in this kind of work for organic sculpting. On occasion, you might find a use for it, but Dynamesh typically will just get the job done just as easily. All right, so I want this to be cleaned up quite a bit more, as right now it's pretty janky. So let's get in here and get some lower poly count going on. So just a quick ZBrush at about 1K. That should be plenty for our polygon count, and then we can project any of this that we want to keep. There's really not a lot that we need to keep in terms of projecting, but I might as well, just to retain as much of this creased form that I've created on the sides and everything else. Plus you start to lose some volume after you ZBrush and subdivide, so we don't want to do that as well. And those subdivs are going to allow me to get in here really easily and just kind of clean up a lot of this. And I should really have some reference other than, like I said, I want to find a good reference for this pose. I'll probably take some pictures of my own hand to get that. For right now, I'm just kind of looking at my own hand on occasion for anything specific where I'm feeling like things are not looking the way they need to. Trying to force the surface to turn here on the bottom of the thumb, adding in some volume, pinching along that joint So get the surface to kind of have a hit there a little bit better. Oh man, my throat is dry. Let's see. New sleeve. I mean to finish it. Oh, I don't know how to polish my characters. Do you have any advice? I mean to finish it. Okay, you're continuing. I mean to finish it, but every time it looks unfinished. I don't know, man. That'll just kind of come with practice. I think the more you do, the more hours and time you put in there, I think you'll definitely get it. So a lot of hours need to be put in there for sure. Great, thank you, Martin. Appreciate it. Just trying to get a little bit more volume on the bottom of this thumb, as it kind of, if you look at a cross section, it was looking a little bit tapered towards the bottom, so we're trying to square that out a little bit, add a little more volume down there. Kind of this spidery look. Essentially we're gonna have a bend here, I'm thinking. Slight bend. And looking at our reference as well. Trying to get this straight line here. If anything, a little bit of a swoop. So it's okay if we're a little bit dirty at first, as we move stuff around and kind of break any of the form that we've built up to that point. That's fine, that's not a big deal. That's easy to kind of go back through and clean up. We just want to make sure that we're getting our large kind of changes first, and then we can kind of focus on the other stuff after that. We don't want to get caught up spending a lot of time trying to correct all these little things when the major forms and landmarks are not working the way that we need them to. It's pretty counterproductive. Trying to flatten out this plane a little bit more, as it was still a little bit too rounded. I like the trim dynamic brush a lot. It's not quite as planar as a lot of the other brushes. Like H polish tends to push things really far, which can be helpful sometimes. I mean, I can try to stroke very lightly here, but I don't know, it's pretty destructive of a lot of things. I like the trim dynamic brush for most of this kind of stuff. Just a great brush in general. I use it quite a lot. The bottom of our palm, you know, it doesn't matter too much because it'll never ever ever be seen in a million billion years, but we want that to look decent enough so that everything else is kind of lining up nicely here. So our thumb, our fingers, which we can turn one of those on, I guess. And we want that all looking good, nice together. I'm also gonna have to move this up. In terms of angle, I think we can adjust our thumb some more here. So let's come on through like so, soften that. I want to rotate out some more. Rotate up some. A little bit more rotate out. Getting there. Might need to flatten this out. I think we need to work on this plane change here. This is looking pretty crazy. That's not a great shape. See what our poly count's doing. We're lacking some polys there to make that change. Trying to flatten this out, kind of define these planes a little bit more. Pinch it up, get that plane change happening really strongly. And we're still getting a little bit of that nasty curve. Try to alleviate that as much as I can. Getting there. Still some weird shadows and stuff. That's not a big deal though. That's pretty easy to tackle. Let's see. Want to kind of define that plane change that we see happening in our thumb. So it's a pretty sharp kind of transition. I think that's going to exist in most of our fingers as well. So if I can, I'd like to get that. Working on this silhouette a little bit more. It's definitely getting there. One small little push at a time. And eventually it'll all come together. Seems like a lot of little changes, but they start to add up pretty quick. We're definitely getting that angle a little bit more there. Kind of want to define this a little bit better. So we're probably going to have some fingernails on here, so I just want to leave enough of a form there so I can do that. Got some kind of fingerless glove action going on that also stretches all the way up the arm, which is interesting. It's kind of fun. I wish that they did cover the fingers, because I might not make fingernails. I'm not a huge fan of putting fingernails on this type of character. Really, it's not a make or break thing. A lot of the time it goes pretty unnoticed. Flattening out some of that plane a little bit more with my trim. With my trim brush. So between the thumb connecting to the palm there, I want that to be almost completely flat. Can have a little bit of roundness to it, but for the most part, I want a nice clean surface there, and I think we're pretty close. So we're looking at this line, still a little bit of warble there in the silhouette. Not quite as clean as it could be. That's pretty straight now. Just a little tweaking here and there will do the job. Same on the thumb, but I'm kind of fine with it for now, at least. Looking at the index finger, which we should merge into our palm, and then kind of go with a little bit longer here. Let's see. Pretty much the same thing for this index finger. Sorry guys, my contacts are really dry right now. I don't know why, but my eyes always get super dry whenever I wear my contacts. Well, I know why, but I don't like it. It always happens. It's annoying. So let's merge our index finger in. Actually, let's line up that transition a little bit better, and then we can think about merging that in. So I want to do the same transition here on this. So we're trying to get that nice kind of 1-2 look. So this has, if we look here at the silhouette, it's kind of got that shape to it, right? It's got like this dip in here, and then it rounds out there. That's what we want to avoid. That stuff sucks. It's not good to do that. At least not in this instance. What's really not good pretty much ever is when your surface is, you know, looking like this. That's really bad. That's a no-no. We want to avoid this stuff. So let's go on back here. Start to fill in this form. Clean that up. And get some more pinch in here. We're really trying to define this plane break. Let's do a slice. Z-remesh, keep groups. And that should put us in a good place. Oh man, it's always my right eye that really bothers me. Need to wear my glasses more often. Alright, so what we're looking for, again, that 1-2 break, but we're starting to get a little bit more curve up here. So kind of want to reverse that or straighten it out. I think we're just going to straighten it out some. For our fingers up here, I am not going to make them quite as noodly as is pictured. So we are going to want to clean that up. But we're going to be duplicating our hand up there. I just want to be careful with how much form I put down here because I don't want to end up re-sculpting a ton of stuff for the other hand. Make sure that this is looking okay from all angles. Move our light around as well. I'm just using my move brush gently here, kind of nudging things around. I've kind of destroyed most of the form of this other knuckle. It's not a big deal though. We're not missing anything too crazy. And I am sculpting this character in pose, which adds an extra bit of challenge. It's not the easiest workflow in the world. Alright. Subdivide, that's looking pretty good. If I want to define that other knuckle a little bit more, it's about right there, maybe a little bit more forward actually. So if I do want to define that, I can kind of come in here and maybe pinch some of that just to get a little bit of a visible transition as the light hits that. Move our light. See that a little bit better. So maybe just like a little build up there, something like that. I think even less than that actually. So let's kind of like trim that. Something like this. Let's go down, 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 down. Pinch those, smooth it out. Just enough to get a little bit of a build up there. Still looking pretty dirty though. I just want enough change in the silhouette so it's like, yes, there is a knuckle there. Okay. At the tip of the finger, if we want to kind of pull down, flatten out some of this, get some extra volume in there. Move back face masking for that area. And I think that's a pretty good place before we merge this down and duplicate it a few more times. Alright, so we got that surface kind of turning and we got that silhouette change happening. That is what we were looking for. The next thing that we're looking for, kind of lining these up a little bit better. I can kind of flatten my thumb a little bit because I think it is quite a bit too thick. So that's a change that we need to make. And then we can kind of move our finger down according to kind of our reference here. Line some things up a little bit if we need to. A little bit of flattening there. Still kind of retained this transition though, so I'm still happy with that. Still good in that area, in that regard. Looking here, definitely a lot closer. I think we can stand to maybe rotate our finger down a little ways. Let's see, we've got a little platform here. So maybe something like that. And that also kind of helps us line up our thumb. Whoops, mask that off. Helps to kind of line this up so we can kind of figure out some of this angle as well. Need to rotate this some more. And pull in too. So we're kind of defining some planes there a little bit better than we were before. I think this is actually going to have a little bit more rotation in it now that we're kind of planning on doing that kind of propped up by the fingers look. So lower, definitely over by the pinky, so we can kind of get that rotation in there now too. Alex, welcome to the stream. Glad to have you here, man. Hope you're doing well. We're playing with our hands, with our fingies right now. Trying to line some stuff up with a ground plane. Pretty crazy hand we got going on. Pretty crazy character we have going on. There's a lot more work that we need to do. Let's see. So, again, that kind of a little bit more rotation here. A little bit of a rounding that happens. Always a little bit higher towards that your middle finger, that middle knuckle. And getting a little bit of that curvature here that we're looking for. And I'm looking at my silhouette there too, which isn't super helpful, but at least a little bit points us in the right direction. Alright, so let's get those other fingers in there. We're going to have pretty much the exact same pose for all of these, I think. Just duplication. Do the same thing that we did earlier. Slide down. Looking for this little bit of rotate out. Middle finger and index finger, pretty much the same size, same thickness, I would say. But middle finger, pretty much a little bit longer. That's about it. Ring finger, kind of the same deal. A little bit more narrow, ever so slightly more narrow. And normally ever so slightly shorter. So first a little bit of that scale in. Not a lot, doesn't need a lot. And a little bit of a pull in here. Might be able to actually exaggerate the middle finger here even more so. Just like really pull that out. Real quick here, proportion check. See what we're looking like. Maybe even make that a little bit longer. I think that's fine. This guy's looking a little bit short now too. And pull that out. Duplicate him one last time for our pinky. Pinky's gonna be, of course, the teeny weeny guy. We'll scale in on him ever so slightly. And for all of these, I'm going to have to add some rotation, which isn't a problem, but I just want to pull this in a little bit. Kind of trying to figure out the angle that I need all these at as well. Trying to follow that line there and have the rest of these be sprawled out a little bit more. I'm actually going to attempt to group these fingers together a little bit more. So thumb, index, and then the additional 3. And I'm doing that just for readability purposes, or attempted readability purposes. Can make it a lot easier to read this pose, what's going on here. If we kind of work in this idea. So we have those lined up with our ground planes pretty well. Pinky could maybe move down a little bit. Ring finger ever so slightly down a little bit. Now I just need to line up those connection points, and then we can merge all of our fingers into our hand and start cleaning this up. So a little bit of rotation there. Actually, I'm not going to use rotate. Instead, I'm going to use the move brush, or I'm sorry, not move brush, but move transpose tool. With move, you can kind of stretch and move some stuff around in a pretty unique way. In this case, I am going to use the move like a rotate. It'll essentially skew it for our purposes here. The reason I'm doing that is because I don't want to straight up rotate the finger. I still want to keep most of that plane on the bottom. So this is a little bit of a trick so that I can do that. And it works pretty well. Might kind of try to group these a little bit differently. I think my palm needs to be stretched more. Not looking very stretched right now. Looking pretty neutral. So having these all evenly splayed out, I would like to try to group these together in some way, but I don't know, it might just look kind of dumb if I do that. Grouping typically helps with readability from a lot of different angles, especially in the fingers. Just because there's a lot of different forms going on, a lot of different character that can be accomplished in the hand. Right now we're not really getting this kind of tension. The hand still looks too relaxed, so I'm going to have to get rid of a lot of the curves that we have in here to kind of make things look a little bit more tight. Spiffy hand, thank you, appreciate it. We got an entire, what is that? Turn that off. Oh, nope, that is what I wanted. We have our entire character up here, entire body. I also have the head and face and everything. For those that are just kind of popping in here, we'll take another look at this. So here's our character's face that we've modeled out. We are sculpting in pose, so my head isn't currently aligned with my body because I'm still working with symmetry there. Here is our hand. Our hand needs to scale up as well. Our hand's a little small, but we are currently aligning that with our ground plane, which is oh so much fun. We're figuring it out. Let's toggle. Well, actually, I'll leave this on. Don't want to slice. No, thank you. We just want to select. And blah 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 blah. And yawn a lot. I'm gonna turn off that polypaint. All right. So back to our hand here. What we're looking for, oh, go away, I don't want you. We're looking for this more splayed out type of look. So I think the main thing that's really making it not look super splayed out is this side of the hand. It's got too much of this roundness here. So I'm gonna try to flatten this out a little bit more, get some sharper transitional lines, and that should help out a lot. And maybe even this. You know what? I think this is kind of adding to it as well. So I'm going to try to straighten this line out some too. And I'm going to hide that plane. It's kind of getting in the way as I rotate around here. This is going to have to obviously change. That's fine though. It's kind of just a placeholder for the time being. So no worries there. Let's see. I'm trying to get this tension. Let's try to maybe just like push this really far and see what happens. So really kind of push that and rotate it out and just move our other fingers to kind of accommodate that space a little bit better. So that's kind of pretty extreme there. Just rotate these a little bit better. So these are pretty spread out, pretty far spread out between their digits, which actually might be a little bit better now that I think about it. Will also help once we merge these fingers into our hand. Let me, oh, you know, it might be easier. So kind of look real quick what I'm looking at here. If you guys can see this shadow there, I'm sure maybe it's a little bit hard to see. If I change the material, I might be able to see it a little bit better. So these areas are definitely problem areas that I need to focus on and clean up. And they're really easy to overlook. That was a terrible selection. But they're definitely stuff that we need to look out for, especially now that we're getting to this kind of stage where we're ready to merge some stuff down and do some cleanup. All right. And kind of rotate a little bit. Still see that that shadow there. Essentially what's causing that is the surface right here. Kind of doing this. That's a really extreme of what it's doing, but very similar. So we just need to kind of come through and flatten out this plane of the hand some. Really, I'm just trying to make some big strokes here with my trim dynamic brush to try to flatten that out some more. Keep clearing my mask on accident. It's pretty annoying. And I'm using the alternative smooth brush right now. So hold shift, start smoothing your surface, and then let go shift. It'll kind of help normalize your polygons or average them a little more than the traditional smooth brush. I'll also be remeshing this hand and playing with that as we go. So it's getting there for sure. Proportionally, I think our fingers, our thumbs definitely a little wonky. I've been kind of avoiding working on that. Our fingers actually are, I think, it looks like they're too long, but they're actually a little bit too short. I'm just going to leave them where they are for now, though. And try to get some more of that volume back in our thumb, as it's more so this side than anything else. If I select this, kind of look in here maybe a little bit, might be easier to see, but actually it's not super easy to see from this angle. Essentially the shape that I'm getting is like that, and I want it to be more squared off on this this face here. But we do have a nice kind of gesture happening here, so I'm really happy about that. Just kind of force some things out, and then after that it's pretty easy to kind of clean up that area. Still, thickness is kind of annoying here, so let's kind of pull in some, take that back. I exaggerated it first on purpose just so that I could blend that a little bit better, and now it's kind of just a little bit, you know, too much. Am I going to 3D printer? Maybe. The way I'm sculpting her, it's definitely going to be pretty much ready for printing by the time I get done here. Just make it, I don't know, it'd probably take like a day to finish getting it after I'm done sculpting it, just to get it, yeah, not even a day really, just to get it ready for 3D printing, depending on how I was going to print it. If it was SLA, I could like key her up really quick, it wouldn't take that long. Could probably do, I don't know if I would split the legs off. I'd probably split the arms off. And then I would probably, actually I would probably do this in like 5 pieces if I was going to print it SLA. FDM, you would have to split it into at least 5 pieces. Just so that you can print with your y-axis being, you know, so you can get the most resolution out of this stuff. That's what a lot of people don't realize about FDM printing. A lot of people make a lot of those newbie mistakes, you know. Ooh, here's this 3D model, let's just print it. If you were to print this like, whoops. If you were to print this like FDM, most of you probably know what FDM is. It's like PLA or ABS plastic. It looks like a spool of material that's like fed and heated through an extruder. Looks like a spool of weed whacker or trimmer material. If you were to print this like straight top, bottom to top as one piece, you'd have so much. Your resolution wise, it would be pretty good. This back leg would look like garbage. This leg would look pretty good just because it's in the Y. This arm would get pretty effed up, not just because of resolution, but because of supports and everything else, which is why I would have to like split this up and key it off. But I've been thinking about doing some more tutorials on 3D printing, or like maybe even a course specifically on setting stuff, like your file, like a really small course on setting stuff up for 3D printing. It's really so dependent on your character, and so dependent on what kind of file you're trying to print. What's it for? Is it just RP, or is it going to be for production, or what? Just depends. If you're going to print it FDM, SLA, lots of factors. But yeah, I don't know if I'll print her or not. I still don't have my SLA printer. I actually don't know if I'm going to keep it or not. I haven't really decided yet. I have an SLA 3D printer that I ordered, and it's coming soon, but I might decide to just return it. So I don't have a huge use for an SLA machine right now. It'd be cool to own, but those things are pretty expensive. I ended up finding a really good deal on one though. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. It'd be fun to do some stuff with 3D printing on the channel. And if I'm going to own a printer, I'd rather have an SLA machine than an FDM. Alright. How are we looking splayed out wise here? Let's whoa, come on back please. Let's blend this. A little bit more. And probably move my my hand to kind of fit into this a little bit better too. I think I had the wrong brush selected there. This is fine, that'll blend nicely. We do have some nice gestural stuff going on here though. So I want to look at this from a few different angles with perspective on. Our hand definitely needs to be bigger for our character. And that's something I'll look at here shortly as well. So it still feels not like there's enough tension in it. And I think one of those things, for the most part, if you want there to be like tension or feel like something is flexing, you want to get rid of a lot of these curves. And I think this curve is one of the last ones that's kind of keeping it from getting there, as well as the curve of the top of the hand. I think those two things are some of the last things that are kind of keeping this looking like it has this kind of flexed tension look, like it's holding up the body, helping to hold up the body. So how can we do that? How can we flatten out that top surface? There's a lot of ways. I'm going to mask it off. And then change it from there. I'm doing a little bit of a softening on the mask here. Just kind of get a good selection. I like to use the mask lasso tool a lot. The mask pen I use for a little bit more cleaner selections if I'm trying to really get super clean on like something like that line there. I'll start off with the mask lasso pretty much always though, and then kind of go from there. So I'm hitting this pretty strongly with just my smooth brush and a little bit of trim dynamic to help guide the surface along. For the most part though, that really strong smooth brush should help get this where I want it to go. And kind of look at this from our side angle again, up towards the top there. You can see these different areas where we need to clean that up. So that line, it's getting there, but it's still got some problem areas. Much better though. I think that pretty much does it for now. I would also like to merge our fingers down into our hand, since we've just kind of had them hanging out there. Let's see. The question on my mind right now is, do I want to merge my fingers in before I duplicate and send the hand over there? I guess it really won't matter if I ZBrush and project the details on so I can have some subdiv levels. I guess it's not that big of a deal either way. I don't think I should worry about it. Go ahead and start merging these down. Let's get a little bit more angle in here, if I can. It's really hard to rotate around something close up if you have perspective on, or at least it is in my opinion. It's annoying. So I tend to keep that off while I'm working on stuff close up like this. It's best that you kind of toggle it on and off while you work, though. You don't want to be without perspective for too long because stuff can start to look pretty awkward. Whoop. Accidentally, well, I was really confused there for a second. I accidentally clicked away from my live stream on YouTube. I was checking something. Kegler Khan, welcome to the stream. It's an interesting name. I'm into it. A relative of Genghis. Or maybe Kangas, the Pokemon Kangaskhan. If I can, just one more small tweak here. Welcome to the stream, everybody that's kind of just popping in here at the end. I'm not going to be streaming too much longer, but either way, welcome. If you have not already, definitely check out the concept artist who made this work. It's DDino. There's a link down in the description to their ArtStation profile. You can go check that out. Here's their artwork. We're just working on the hand right now. I've already done most of the body and the face and the head and hair, and kind of blocked out a lot of that stuff and sculpted some stuff a little bit more than others. Working on the hand right now. Definitely go give them a follow. Check out their stuff. And there's also a link down in the description to my Gumroad, where you can check out my most recent tutorial that I've released, as well as there's some brushes and materials and other stuff on there. So if you like some of the free stuff that I'm making here on my YouTube channel, or if you want to support me for any reason, I don't know why you would. But if you like the free stuff, I guarantee you'll like the paid stuff. I put a lot more time and effort into that, and it's of a lot higher quality. Particularly my most recent tutorial, Sculpting for Toys and Collectibles. There's a lot of great stuff in there. Even if you're not looking to sculpt specifically for that, if you're just looking to learn ZBrush for any other reason, it's a great way to kind of level up your skills in that area. So definitely check it out. And if you do, you can always ask me any questions at any point. Don't be shy, and I'd be happy to help out. So I'm going to hang out here for probably 10 more minutes and make a few more changes to this hand. We've done a lot of good stuff here. I think we've really kind of found the gesture here that we're looking for, and got that tension. We can turn our plane back on here and start to merge our fingers down. But yeah, we kind of got this splayed out look. I did want to try to group some of these fingers together a little bit more. It didn't really work out the way I was hoping, though, unfortunately. It's not the end of the world, and we can still maybe do something with that. I can, like, let's see. If you still want to keep like a splayed out look, or if you still want to like retain the pose of your hand, you can do that. and also kind of shrink some of this in. The main thing that's adding to that look is this side of the hand right now having this kind of straight edge, and I can kind of bring that in some to make the hand a little bit more narrow, but I have to make sure that I bring it in back here on the wrist as well. We do have room to do that though, so it's not a huge deal. But with that, what that's going to allow us to do is possibly kind of group some of these fingers together a little bit better. And what I mean by that is, let's get a little bit of a move here, rotate here. So just trying to like group these up a little bit better. In our reference, we can only see kind of 2 of these fingers, so it's really not that big of a deal. It just helps with readability, and it's something I wanted to try to accomplish here with this character. It's just like not working out the way I wanted. Not a big deal. Let's merge. Grab our hand. Grab our fingers. We'll start with our hand. I'm just going to delete the subdiv, merge down, and now when merging down, I don't have to wait for it to recalculate and reconstruct all those subdivision levels. And then after the fact, if I want to get those back, I can just click on reconstruct subdiv. I don't want to though. What I want next is to dynamesh all this junk together. But I do want to line up this one finger a little bit better. Ooh, slide on down, please. Thank you. And kind of connect that a little bit better. Make sure all of these are in a good place connection-wise before we dynamesh. Don't want to have to do more cleaning up than we absolutely have to. But I think we've done a pretty good job of taking the time to block out a lot of this stuff and get it to a good place. So I'm pretty happy with where we are right now. So let's just dynamesh this together at 500. It's given us 500,000 polys roughly. It looks like it's retaining most of our form here, so I'm going to say that that is good. If we want from here, let's step back. Let's run in auto groups just so I can keep some polygroups here. Let's dynamesh one more time, a little bit of a higher res. And now we can kind of work on these connection areas. But it would be lucrative at this point to get some nice clean subdivs in there for us. And what's great about keeping these polygroups, I'll turn off the line so we can see a little bit better. What's great about keeping these polygroups is now we can Z-remesh with keep groups on. So go in there, keep groups on. We'll just do a quick Z-remesh here so you guys can see the result. It might be a little wonky around some of these areas, but I can kind of correct that before we do the actual thing. But this will allow us to kind of help the remeshed topology to kind of flow in the way that we want it to. So a little bit wonky right there, but we can kind of see how it's retained polygroups. There's some gross stuff going on here just because of that artifact, but I think with a little bit of cleanup, we can get these into a really nice place. So I think that's gonna be it for today's stream. I'll have to do that after, a little bit later. Turn on perspective here. One last look at our hand, and I guess we can turn on the rest of our body too. And I'll resize up that hand. Oh, you know what? Maybe we can turn on the rest of all of that stuff there. So I don't have the head turned on, no big deal. But let's see. All right, cool. Well, I think that's gonna be all for today. Again, Dino, check him out down in the description, as well as check out my Gumroad for some other cool tutorials, some stuff that's a little bit higher quality than some streams and other free content that I offer on my YouTube channel. But yeah, thanks guys for coming and hanging out, keeping me from being lonely while I ZBrush. And I will see you guys in the next live stream, which will hopefully be tomorrow night. All right, I'll see you guys then, and have a great day.